A pleasant good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am your host, Rondell, Donawa, and once again, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to bring another episode of Strictly Legal. Of course, you can catch us on traditional media as well as the World Wide Web, WESNCC.com, as well as Strictly Legal with Rondell Donawa on our podcast. Now, we're going to do something a bit different today. From time to time, I would bring in attorneys at law who have been instrumental in their practice, as well as, just getting their story, because a lot of time you find that persons think that attorneys don't have a lifestyle outside of law, but of course also it's important to just understand the mindset of how one becomes an attorney, as well as their journey through life and various types of jobs or practices and all those various things and skill sets. Of course, as an attorney at law, you have to go through the normal educational process and procedure. But today I have a very special guest. I know she's no stranger to this content capital. And the reason why I invited her, because I believe she has a story to tell. And of course, she is an attorney at law, Mrs. Janelle John-Bates. She has been an attorney at law for quite over 14 years, and she has had extensive experience both in Trinidad and Tobago as well as internationally. And I'm quite interested for her to tell her story legally, her stories untold, stories unfold. And I will not go deep into her bio because, of course, that is the purpose of the program today. And I would welcome her on this particular set. I know she is on other sets, but of course, this particular set, Strictly Legal. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning, Rondell. It's lovely to be in WSN in this capacity. Thank you for asking me to be here today.
And welcome to Strictly Legal. And of course,
thank you.
Sitting on such noble chair that most persons, legal luminaries would have sat on. So I'm very grateful.
Honor.
I'm very grateful for you to be here. Of course, this episode, we are not speaking about really a topic of a law per se, but really about your life. Legally, here's a journey unfolded. I know many persons know who is Janelle John. Obviously, you're married now, Janelle John-Bates,
yes.
Right? A very fancy name. and just going through your journey, I would have met you some years back, quite a few years.
I feel like we would have first met didn't we meet in England? Or we would have been...
I think we met in England on social settings, but I think more officially it may have been when Hello Konya Foundation was launched.
Could be, yes, it's so long ago, yes.
Somewhere
probably.
in 2011 or so, 2012, relaunched. And of course, I think at that time you would have, you were working at the DPP.
In 2012, yes, I was at the DPP. You see I'm looking up?
Yes.
That is over 10 years ago now? Wow,
yes,
it shocks me. But yes, in 2012, until April, because I did leave the country in April 2012, I was at DPP.
And we will get to that.
Yes.
So just tell us, who is Janelle John-Bates?
Oh my goodness. I should have known to prepare that question, right? Well, the obvious, Janelle John-Bates is an attorney at law. I spent most of my legal career working with the state. I recently launched my own private practice. I guess we'll get into those details. Outside of the law, though, because I am one of those, I don't know if it's few lawyers or one of the lawyers who don't believe life is law and law is life. Right. I believe there's more to life, and I hope we get into that as well. That's something I'm interested in speaking about. But outside of that, I have a deep interest in socio-political issues. That's why I come here on Friday on Talking Point. I sing, I'm with the Mariners Chorale. I believe in fitness. Yes. I am also very much interested in education and youth. So I was, I still am actually, executive member of my Past People's Association, St. Joseph's Convent Past People's Association. And I do a lot of work with any ministry that would allow me. Recently, I was on the 40 under 40 caravan, working with the Ministry of Youth, my DNS as we call it, Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. So I have a lot of areas of interest, but I think what is at the heart of that is service. I'm a patriot, and my goal is in everything I do to make this country a better place.
Of course. Service to God, service to man. I know you are deeply involved in
church.
Church, right? Yes. I know you don't play with that, right? And obviously, persons of the belief that if you're involved in church, you can do certain things. But it's about your relationship with God,
yes,
I believe.
Service.
And
for me, it's all about service. Any area I can serve. And when I was at church, actually, I was a Sunday school teacher. I must admit, I haven't been that involved in my church anymore. But I was a Sunday school teacher because for me, I just love the children. So any area I could assist in that regard, it's an area I would volunteer my time.
So let's start in terms of your I mean, obviously getting into law. Was that your first choice?
Yes, it was. Yes, at the age of 10, I mean, I'm a 10-year-old. How many careers am I exposed to? Lawyer, doctor. But when I thought about it, people always told me, even at that age, I talk a lot. I ask a lot of questions, a lot of probing questions. I'm always advocating, even then advocating for something. And with that in mind, I decided I want to be a lawyer. And my mother said, great. And that was the end of that in terms of, but as you also know, I have another career that I'm very much interested in, and that came about in my teens. But,
wow.
Yes.
Well, let's just chat about that one.
Well, that's just politics.
Right,
so as I did say, socio-political issues. And I guess even back then, socio-political issues were poignant to me. It was obvious to me. I don't know it's because of my background. I didn't come from a wealthy background. So, example, I had to travel to and from school. And one of the biggest woes and banes of my existence at that time was our transportation system. And I used to complain every day because I would be stuck in Citygate from 3 o'clock on 5. And you know what's trouble?
And you were coming from where?
I went to school in Port of Spain, St. Joseph's Convent, Port of Spain, and I lived in Chagonas.
Yeah.
So I would be stuck waiting for the bus. I don't know if you remember the blue bus. It was a free bus.
That blue bus, yes.
Right.
Yes,
so back then you would get a free ticket as a student, but the bus came whenever the bus came, and I would complain bitterly. I would do my homework in Citygate and sit down there, and not much trouble I could have gotten into, but I didn't. And then I realized one day I can't do anything about it. Sitting down here grumbling, complaining to my parents made no difference. And at that point I decided, you know what, the only thing I could do is probably get into politics to make it better for someone else. So I know it sounds like a cheesy story, but literally it's my experience which prompted me to think that I want a better Trinidad for other people, even if not myself.
And obviously I know, I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I know that even when you were involved in state, you know, we would have conversations, you know, I want to be involved, but, you know, I can't because of my commitment to your career. And you know, after your schooling, when you were successful in, well, at that time would have been A-levels, right? We wrote A-levels, yes. Old, right? You won an open scholarship?
Yes, I did win an open scholarship. At that time it was 21 individuals. As usual, they released the results late. So at the end of, I guess it's the end of lower 6 or the beginning of upper 6, I would have applied to universities in England and UE Law School. I got into all the schools I applied to. I heard nothing about the scholarship, and without the scholarship, I could not afford to go to England. My mother did what she did and best as she could. And my parents, actually mother and father, my parents are married and they are still together. And I went to UE. I did 1 week in UE, and then I found out I won the scholarship, and I dropped out of UE and I went to England.
And you went to UE, obviously, you started law.
Yeah, I started law.
But you started law in UE, Trinidad? Or
yes,
that
in UE in Trinidad.
Okay.
I did 1 week there.
Okay.
I think, I remember Christoph.
Rodriguez?
Yes. I did 1 week, and then I found out about the scholarship, and it really was my dream to study law away because I'm also interested in traveling. So it wasn't that I had any issue with UE, I would have gone, but
of course.
Being in England would have also given me an opportunity to visit other countries I would have never seen before.
No, I don't know why at that time I thought, because I know that at some point, only UE Barbados was offering
back then you did your first year in UE St. Augustine, and then you did your other 2 years in Barbados. Correct. At that point.
Yeah,
so
I
entered first year in St. Augustine.
And tell us about that experience in you read in law in the UK.
Yes, I
read
law
what university?
University of Warwick.
Yes.
It's in Coventry, so it's not London. It was the country, but I chose that school because actually, do you know Lisa Wickham?
Yes.
So Lisa Wickham actually, I think she did her MBA at Warwick, and she came to Convent, and she had a discussion about the school, you know, so here in Trinidadian speak about the school. I was sold. I wanted to go to that school. And I love the fact that it was a campus school. So it was not like schools in London where your class is here, your home is there, you have to take the bus, the train in the middle of the snow. Knowing nothing much about England, I'm like, I don't know if I want to deal with that hassle. Traipsing all over London. This campus university sounds awesome, sounds beautiful, and that's where I went.
Wow. Yeah, Warwick. I mean, Warwick is one of the top
10. Yeah. One of the top 10 universities. I think it's still in the top 10 universities.
Particularly for law, because I know I have a colleague as well who would have gone there on an open scholarship.
Oh, who's that?
I did visit with Stuart.
Oh,
Tennille,
Tennille. Yes, I met Tennille when I was at
Yes.
She's younger than me, so
Yeah,
she
she
came
is, yeah.
into work when I was
Yeah, we
coming
were
my-
around the same time. And
Yes.
obviously, you know, I visited Coventry at one point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's quite different to
Well,
London because I
Coventry,
studied in London.
You studied in the city.
Right, in
I
the
wasn't
city,
even, you know,
yeah.
I'm from Central, so not being in the city doesn't bother me.
Of course, you know, usually when you, I mean, as an enthusiastic youth,
Yeah.
you know, when you travel for university, you want to be in the center of the city.
hub.
You want to be in the hub.
I wanted to be somewhere that looked beautiful and safe, and it seemed, and because she pushed it as a very international school.
Yes.
Again, I'm going in a foreign country. I wanted to be somewhere where I felt at least I wouldn't be ostracized, and that's probably why I actually did not. One of the reasons I did not apply to Oxford. Oxford sounded very British.
But you could have got into Oxford if you, I believe that you
feel
would
like
have had
I
degree.
but and Oxford had their own application process. Back then, and I don't know if it's the same now.
UCAS.
UCAS. So
Yes.
you make one application to all the schools, but I think Oxford and Cambridge had a separate application system, and it costs, again, as I said, I didn't come from a very wealthy background. So paying one sum to apply to 6 schools and then having to pay a separate fee for Oxford and a separate fee for Cambridge seemed financially daunting to me.
And obviously that can come across very elitist. I mean, it is elitist at the end of the day. Now, in the UK, you know, doing law and exposing yourself to the whole international realm of society, how did your mindset develop there in terms of, okay, being in the UK, knowing the cultural differences, and then marrying that back into Trinidad when you have to come back home?
Well, at the time when I was there, I wasn't thinking about how I would marry it at home because I understood that our system basically mimicked the UK system. So I didn't think it would be a difficult transition. Because I mean, we use UK case law here.
Yes, of course.
A lot of our legislation is modeled after British and other Commonwealth jurisdictions. But at that time, I wasn't thinking about how would I make that transition. I just, maybe the folly of youth, I just assumed it would all flow seamlessly.
But in terms of volunteerism, did you get involved in volunteerism?
Yes, actually.
Yes, because I know that's something that you love.
I would.
Yes.
So I actually worked with an organization called Kairos. It was an organization dedicated to assisting ladies of the night, prostitutes, essentially, come out of that way of life. So what we would do is at nighttime, we would actually walk the streets with food and I think we probably had some cigarettes or something, but to entice them, to let them know, you know, you don't have to stand here in the cold because it's cold in the night. Come inside and then you'd start to build a rapport with them because then there would be day programs. So it's like you're trying to get them off, induce them to come inside to inform them about the programs that they can then develop skills so they wouldn't have to rely on that way of life. So that was one of the organizations I worked with.
That's very interesting. I
innovative.
never heard of something like that in terms of.
I don't know how it would work in Trinidad in terms of safety, walking down
Murray
Streets and trying to encourage the. I don't know if it would work.
But how did you see? How did your life change, or did you reflect, you know, on what you would have volunteered at that point and realize, okay, you were blessed to be, you know, at a certain trajectory?
I always knew I was blessed to be at a certain trajectory. As I said, I grew up in church, so we don't believe in being lucky, not lucky or blessed. So I was always mindful that despite where I would have started, my gifts and talents were taking me further than other people because of what they had at their disposal. So I always was and always I am mindful of that.
And well, moving back, I mean, you graduated, right?
Yes.
And then you
I went to England, actually.
Yeah,
well, sorry.
yeah. From England,
from
Warwick, yes.
I finally went to London,
right,
where I got called to the bar. I was a part of Lincoln's Inn.
Lincoln's
I was a member
Inn,
of Lincoln's
yes,
Inn, and I got called to the bar.
well.
Right? Because again, most international students.
I had a joke where they said at Lincoln's Inn, and for you all who do not know, when you study in the UK, right, you have to be a member of the Inns of Courts. So you have 4 Inns of Courts, a barrister, that is, a barrister, because they are barristers,
yes, in England there's a divided profession.
Just explain exactly, you did the bar.
Right, so in England, the profession is not fused like it is in Trinidad, where we just have attorneys at law. They are barristers and solicitors. I mean, their divide is also breaking down, but generally you're either a barrister or a solicitor. Barristers actually have to be called to the bar, and in order to be called to the bar, you have to join one of 4 inns. Yep. I don't know, do I remember all? Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, Inner Temple.
Inner Temple and Middle Temple.
Middle Temple.
Yes.
I chose Lincoln's Inn. I must confess, I'm still not even sure why I had to be a member of an inn. I just know you had to go to 12 dinners. Literal dinners. You had to go and eat and commune with members of
And drink wine, so you have your red wine, white wine.
I mean, I was
port.
never much of a drinker, but I did sip the port, very sweet.
Yes.
And that
And
was
toast to the
actually,
queen.
That was
With
actually
your
a
tea.
prerequisite to being
Yes.
called to the bar.
Yes.
Again.
Which is strange because and obviously if you could not have afforded, there were ways in which they would have assisted you
I didn't even look into
to
that.
dine.
I didn't look into that.
Because it was like £120 or something per, I think it was about
I know,
100.
I didn't feel it was that expensive, but I cannot remember.
Or £60,
I just
somewhere
had to, again, dip into the meager scholarship fund. Because
Yes.
again, my open scholarship, they did extend it to the year that I was in doing bar school.
Right.
So I got 4 years scholarship from the government.
At least probably it was more for me because I did my bar school in Cardiff. So I had to
you
travel
went to
from Cardiff to
Yes.
London to do my dining sessions.
I didn't even think
right?
about how you people in Wales.
Wales, right? And a lot of my colleagues, they were in Gray's Temple because, not Gray's Temple, Gray's Inn, because Gray's Inn is a Welsh, it's more Welsh
oriented,
barristers, barristers, because even their symbol, it's sort of like the dragon flag, the dragon, I believe.
I didn't even know
but of course, there was a joke that Lincoln's Inn is the immigrants' inn.
Well, there were a lot of people from India and Bangladesh in that inn. And a lot of people from Caribbean, but given our numbers, we were still small. I met quite a few people from the rest of the Caribbean while I was at bar school. I met one of my closest friends who's a Trinidadian, actually, at bar school. I met people from the Bahamas, Cayman. So yes, call it what it is.
And then moving to, you did your, at that time was BVC, that's the bar vocational
Yes, it was
course.
called the BVC now. What is it? I know it went to
BPTC,
BPTC, and I think that has even evolved now. So the terms are changing all the time. Yeah.
And then you did your bar at what college?
It was called Inns of Court School of Law, but the year I went in, that was the year they made the official switch to City Law School because they are affiliated with City University.
Yes.
So now it's known as City Law School. I think that was actually on my certificate.
Oh, we're going back into time, Inns of Court Law School.
Yeah, it was called Inns of Court School of Law just before I entered, yeah.
And of course, being called to the bar of England and Wales as a barrister, well, they call us non-practicing barrister.
Yeah, we are non-practicing because I did a mini pupillage when I was called to the bar. So that's in the vacation. I did about a week or two.
And just explain what is the mini pupillage for persons.
The pupillage is like an internship period. So after you call to the bar, you have to do, I think it was at that time a year pupillage before you get like a permanent job in a chambers. Mini pupillage is, I guess, a miniature internship, apprenticeship, which you do in your vacation period. And you do it because it would then be something you could put on your CV in order to then get your full pupillage so that you can then hopefully get a job in the place that you would have done your pupillage. But those were quite difficult to come by, even for British citizens and definitely for someone from a foreign country, not European, because remember at that time, the UK was part of the EU.
Yes.
So the laws were such that, employers had to hire a British person first. If they couldn't find a suitable British person, you can then look into the EU. And then if you can find somebody in the EU, then you can open up your employment to foreigners. So I already knew, besides the fact that I had my scholarship obligation, which I did intend to fulfill, it would have been an uphill battle. So I didn't really even I didn't apply for any pupillages because I knew I was coming back home to work here.
And that scholarship obligation is obviously that you have to come back
yes,
to Trinidad.
I'd been a full scholarship winner. At that time, I had to come back and work with the government for 5 years.
Wow.
Yes, open scholarship.
Is that still the same?
It evolved because when I signed my agreement, the government was obliged to find me a job in my field within 6 months of me returning. I think that aspect, I don't know in terms of the years of service, but that aspect evolved. It was the government had, in my time, I signed for 3 months. So they had 3 months to find me a job and then I would be free. Then they put it to 6 months. Then they put it on an obligation of both the student and the government to try and find a job for you here. So they tightened up on ways that people could, should I say, escape the scholarship obligation. But again, it was always my intention to come back home and work for the state. I guess growing up with two parents who worked for the state, it just seemed natural to me. So I didn't even stress about those obligations.
And your first state job? Let's talk
my
about
first official state job, well, when I came back, actually, was during the Summit of the Americas, just before the Summit of the Americas. No. Yes, but no, that's not true. When I came back was in 2008. I actually had to do 6 months. I did the 6 months transitional course in Hewarding. Graduated in April, as in got the certificate in April, and then Chogam was April and May. So Summit of the Americas and Chogam back then were being held in Trinidad, and they were back to back. So I got an OJT position working with the Secretariat, and I worked for both Summit of the Americas and Chogam. In the Summit, I worked with the Legal Secretariat, and Chogam, I worked as a liaison officer for Bermuda. So those were my first jobs, straight out of school. And then after that, I worked with the Ministry of Public Administration as associate professional. So that's what, when you came back as a scholar and they didn't find an exact post for you, they gave you a 1-year contract and you were called an associate professional. But I worked in the, again, I was fortunate. A lot of scholars have this experience. When they come back, they're not placed in posts that align with what they studied. But I came back, I did the Chogam and Summit as a legal person, and then I worked in Ministry of Public Administration in their legal department for 10 months.
Okay, wow. And thereafter, what happened?
And thereafter, so during that period, that year, this is a year for them to also find you something more permanent. I was offered a position, a contract, a 3-year contract with Chief State Solicitor's Department in the Ministry of the Attorney General. Now, at that time, I was really gung-ho about being an advocate. Chief State Solicitors, of course, are the instructing attorneys, but I was advised by, other legal minds to take it, because then you have a foot in the Ministry of the Attorney General, and then you can either transition to the Solicitor's Department, or what I did eventually, which was work in the DPP's department.
Oh yes, and let's chat about the DPP's department. You started there. You started there at what year?
I started in DPP in you see, you have to look up. I have to really go back. But I started in DPP.
I can reference you.
It was September 2011.
Yes.
Yes, I started DPP. And so when I was in Chief State, the ad for State Counsel 1, which is a permanent position, came out. I applied, and people tell me, "Girl, apply. They're going to take forever to appoint you." I applied for that, and around the same time, I also applied to work, to get a position with the UN. So we'll talk about that. Yeah. And then within a month of my interview, I was called, come and work in DPP. I was shocked, because people told me it's years. And I do see why they say...
And the need attorneys?
But I did understand what they mean, because I have subsequently done interviews while working at DPP, and it would take like a whole year before you found out if you got the promotion, you got the position. So yes, I understand now why people say the public service takes time. But in that time, after a month of doing the interview, I was called and I started working at the DPP's department in September 2011.
Wow.
Yes.
And you worked there for how long?
I worked there for 6 months before everything was finalized for me to go to work, to be seconded to work with the UN.
Let's chat about that in terms of that process, because you moved from DPP, you worked there for 6 months. I believe you would have been an advocate.
Yes. So I was, State Counsel 1, the lowest level. So we were, at that time, when you started DPP, they would have assigned you to work with a senior attorney in High Court. So I actually spent that 6 months period, more or less, assisting senior attorneys in the High Court.
And in terms of assisting, you will not be advocating.
No, well, it depends on who you work with. So some of the seniors, depends on the case as well, would allow you to do. So I did some examination in a case, in a grievous assault case. But then there was a serious murder. When I was moved to another very senior counsel, I actually worked, that was a case with the late Dana Sitahal. She was leading the state, and that was a murder. At that point, you have external senior counsel, you have senior members of the DPP. My work at that point was relegated mostly to instructing work, because there were also other junior attorneys. So
and obviously instructing work means that you have to do all the research, you have to do all the communication,
yes, all the letter writing, communication, any research needed, collating of files, that sort of thing. No standing up and advocating in court. So as I said, when they assign you, depends on who you're working with and the matter you're working on.
And of course, as attorneys, even when you're in law school and you're doing various internships, etc., it's always advised that, to be a great advocate, you should start with criminal law. Practice, right? Because criminal practice really brings out the
really a lot of oral advocacy.
You think on
definitely
your feet.
Different from civil, which is a lot of paperwork.
Yes.
Up front.
So to be a great advocate, that is, and that's the only way. That's the area of law that which you really develop those skill sets. So let's move from the aspect of you being in DPP, applying? Did you apply to the UN? How did that
so
work?
when I was in chief state, a circular, so sometimes you'd see these memorandums and circulars coming out in the office. And I believe the UN would have sent communication to our Trinidad permanent office in New York. But they sent it, I guess, throughout member states, asking member states to second. I was going to use the word donate. I don't know if you donate a person, but basically they send employees of the state to work with the UN, and at that point it was to work in the United Nations and the African Union mission in Darfur in Sudan.
In Sudan.
So I just heard, at that time I was about 26, I just heard Africa. And I thought, oh my goodness, the opportunity, UN is great, but the opportunity to work and live in Africa before 30, I never knew, when would I have been able to get to Africa? I don't know.
But in Sudan, you hear from this part of the world, certain parts of Africa, you are very, in terms of, it's a war-torn zone.
It was a war zone. That's why there was a mission there. The mission there was to assist in stabilizing the situation there. And Sudan is still, even all these years later, still always back and forth with civil conflict. So yeah, it was a war zone. But I mean,
you applied. I
applied.
Right?
So I think I had to. Wow, it's really hard. I think I had to send my application through the ministry to our UN office in New York or something, and then it went on to the UN. And then I was shortlisted.
And this was for shortlisted in terms of what catchment area did they use to shortlist?
So I applied as a judicial affairs officer for their rule of law department. There were several positions they were asking the state to send individuals.
And it's just Trinidad and Tobago they were asking?
No, so they were asking, I don't know how many members, but it was sent out to member states of the UN. So it went out and people applied or didn't apply, I don't know. I applied as a Trinidadian, sent my application, went to New York, wherever it went. And then I was interviewed via phone, which was novel to me. It's not so novel now in the post-pandemic era, but that 10 years of, well, this was 2011.
Yes.
Was very novel. I was interviewed over the phone, and then shortly thereafter I found out I was shortlisted to go. It was unbelievable to me. Now my father...
Well, I was not going to ask what were your parents.
Now my parents trust that I was always a sensible, reasonable, and strong-willed individual. So I always, this is what I want to do. This is how I plan to get there. So they trusted me. But my father, when I guess they themselves, they're like, okay, well, let's see. So I guess everybody was surprised that I was shortlisted. And my father did confess that he was worried. And my father is never really a person to express any concern,
Right,
I think he just trusts me. And he was, Sudan. He probably asked some friends, and it's like, you are sending your daughter to a war zone. But my parents are strong in faith and they trust me, so they're like, all right. So you got, and this secondment means you still have a substantive job in Trinidad. So I still, and that was the fortunate part, because when I applied, I was a contract worker, remember? Okay. But then remember, I applied around the same time I applied for DPP, and DPP called me within a month. So then I was a permanent employee, and that was critical. So I see that's God aligned in everything. So now I actually had a permanent post, which would have allowed them to send me, because if I was on contract, it would not happen. But because it was a novel experience, there was a lot of back and forth communicating ministry. They weren't sure if they could let me go. They never hear about this. How can we do this? Cabinet, There was a whole drama. And after finding out I was selected, it took months before the powers that be figured out how this could work within our government framework. Yes. I don't think they'd ever seconded anybody to work with the UN, because it's like salary, because seconded meaning, of course, you're still employed with the state. Your salary is from the state. Yes. The UN is giving you a stipend.
And
so
this
it's
is
all
in
these.
US.
Yeah, the stipend was in
of
US.
Course.
The stipend was in US. Let's not talk about that. But essentially, the understanding is
tax-free.
The Rondell, don't put my business on Front Street. But the understanding is, if you're seconding somebody, your salary has to come from where you're being your original post. Yes. So they figured it out. It was a whole lot of back and forth, tralala, drama, me writing, telling them, well, it's unfair because you all are the ones who send the communique to government departments. Employees applied, you all knew that, and now you're trying to put a block in it, and it's your obligation as a member state. I and all had to be quoting law for them. Like, you are a member state, this is your obligation. You all said you all would assist people, personnel, whatever. They've made the call. I've been selected. Why are you trying to put a block? Anyway, it worked out. And I left Trinidad in April 2012 to go to Sudan.
Can just tell us this experience? Were you living in what, huts? Were you...
Rondell, stop it now.
Sorry,
A hut. That is rude. No. I can tell you.
I'm black, I said that, yeah.
There's a lot of flights to get to Sudan. Let's start there. And then I get to Khartoum, which is the capital, but that's not where I'll be based. So it's a capital. It's not, it's a capital. It's dusty. It's a desert-based place. A lot of sand. You ever saw tuk-tuks? You ever heard of a tuk-tuk?
Tuk-tuk,
Yeah, like those little... Wow, how do you describe it? Anyway, cars and tuk-tuks and
like
people.
What vehicle?
Those vehicles where like two people would sit.
Yes.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like a car. It's not 4 wheels. It's 2 wheels. It's bigger than a motorcycle, but it can...
3 wheels.
3 wheels, yes.
Yeah, 3 wheels, yeah.
Probably, right.
Yeah, 3 wheels.
So tuk-tuks everywhere. People everywhere. People, they speak Arabic. Well, a Sudanese version. Just like we have a Trini version of English.
Right.
It was a Sudanese version of Arabic. The woman wore like what, in my mind back then, I would describe as a sari. I can no longer remember the official name for it, but it's dressed like that, head wrap sari style. And so it was like nothing I'd ever seen. And then I had to leave the city and then go to Darfur, which
So all
is
that
desert.
time you had security,
So I'm with the UN,
Right,
I'm
okay.
with UN personnel. But when you reach in Darfur, as a UN personnel, you can't just walk down the road. If we are going anywhere, so initially I lived in private accommodation. You had to find your own rental. So I had to, of course you talk to people, because these people are speaking Arabic for the most part. You find somebody who assists you finding a rental place. I actually was seconded with another Trinidadian.
Okay.
A man called Jesse.
Okay.
And I'm forgetting Jesse's last name. But Jesse actually had just not too long became a lawyer, but he was a social worker for most of his life. So he was actually nearing 60. So me, young 27-year-old, and this 60-year-old Rasta man, almost 60-year-old Rasta man, we were quite up here coming from Trinidad. We found these rental accommodations, and we lived what we call outside of camp for a few months, and then we were accommodated in camp. In camp, the housing was either, what do you call them, containers. So that's the first experience I have of containers, or you could actually have houses made of concrete. But I lived in a container on camp when I lived on camp.
And when you say on camp?
So it's, I would describe the compound as a mix between like a university, like how I went to, a university setting, and a prison. Because it's surrounded by, of course, high fences, barbed wire, security posts, men with guns by the gates to be let in is a security thing, scan under your vehicle. And then inside you had the places where you work, and not too far away you had your housing, either the container housing or the concrete housing. There was a gym on site, there was a cafeteria on site, there's a small grocery on site. So
in terms of social life, was there any
social life? Most of the individuals there were army personnel from various countries, mostly African. So the social life would surround around holidays of other nationalities. So every time a nationality had a holiday, they would throw a party. So Rwandan independence, German this, and anytime anybody departed, any group departed, because people would come for a short period, the army personnel were either there 6 months a year. So when they come, they would have a party to invite them, and when they leave, they would throw a party. So the social life every other weekend was some group having a party, and you just storm the party, food, drink. But
it was never an instance where there like a city and there are clubs and bars and whatever.
There's no city, clubs and bars.
Okay.
The outside of the camp,
malls. Yeah.
Outside of the camp, if you go into the village, there was a market, there were some restaurants, and the restaurants closer to the UN camp tried to get as Western as they could. But to go there, you actually most times had to have armed tanker escort taking you to these places. Or more senior officials, if you could drive, if you were given a UN van to drive. Sometimes I guess you could take the risk, but most times you had to move with armed tankers in the front and back of you, especially in official movements.
So just tell.
And there was a church outside, African sort of Pentecostal church outside of camp, well, on another UN site outside the main camp, and I would go there.
And tell us the experience in terms of what were your roles and functions there, what did you do, how, like,
Right,
what
so
impact?
I was a judicial affairs officer, so in the rule of law section. So our aim there was to assist with the rebuilding of the capacity of their judicial and prison personnel. So we would actually develop plans to raise funds and design new prisons and new courthouses, nothing
So
like.
they did not have any
So a lot of those
functional
things,
judicial
well, a lot of
systems,
those things would have been affected by the wars, and of course, it's a big place. It's not like Trinidad, and there would be different systems in different states, and so a lot of these places would have either been bombed or something because of the war with the Janjaweed. So we would assist them with rebuilding and also capacity building of personnel. So there would be classes. I was never involved in the capacity building directly because I can't speak Arabic or couldn't speak Arabic at the time. So we would devise it in-house, and those who can speak the language would go out and actually give the course and assist with helping them build. And I did a lot of mostly reporting and monitoring because, again, I couldn't actually go out and do it. So people would send their reports on what they did. I would collate it and help devise a next course or a next way forward or something like that. I also launched and spearheaded, launched, and basically did the rule of law. We call it the rule of law newsletter every week, highlighting our impact, what we would have done, and the impact of it.
And in terms of now, in terms of the development of the judicial system, would you say that it worked? Would you say that their system now has been developed?
The system is better. I mean, I must admit I haven't gone back. I've never gone back. But I have not examined how far or how deep the impact has been. And again, as I said, they still seem to fall back into the civil war ever so often. So I can't say if what we would have done would have been undermined or unraveled by new infighting.
And how many years you stayed there?
I spent 2 years. So my initial contract or secondment was 1 year, and I asked, 1 year is never really enough to make an impact in a place. And even in a year you have now learned what you're doing. So I wanted another year, I asked, and I got another year, and I spent 2 years in total in Sudan.
Oh, so overall, how do you feel about that entire experience? Because that is once in a lifetime.
It was once in a lifetime.
It's obviously risky, right?
Risky.
But you're able to put that as part of your development, professional and otherwise.
Unfortunately, I have not been able to, unless I'm saying I'm not very proficient in report writing, I can design a newsletter. I can't say that I utilize a lot of these skills. I mean, writing is writing, I guess. But directly the type of law in my career here. But I would say the experience was invaluable. It opened my eyes because, again, coming from Trinidad and going to law school, my idea of what careers that were out there for a legal professional was limited. So that would have then opened up my mind to the entirety of the UN system, the different missions, working with and all the different UN agencies. So in terms of awareness, I think it was helpful. Of course, I got an opportunity to visit Kenya, Uganda, Malawi. I went to Turkey.
Oh, I have a friend from Malawi, actually.
Yes.
We met in England.
Yes, I always want to go back to Kenya. Well. Yes, Kenya is like, it reminds me of so much of Trinidad because of the division and the population breakdown. Like, I never knew there were so many people of East Indian descent.
Oh, wow. Oh,
I mean, I knew that from literature.
Yeah.
I did literature in Form 6, and we read a book, name I can't remember right now, but they spoke about Kenya, and I didn't know there were East Indians living there, but the extent, it really reminded me of Trinidad. But so in terms of awareness on a personal and a professional level and meeting different people, different ways of life, I would say it's invaluable. I would do it again. Wow, you do it again. Well, okay, I probably can't go to Africa now, being married and all of that. But I would not mind if there was, you see, I'm saying I wouldn't mind. If there's a mission in this region, if there's a mission in this region, that means the region is unstable. So I wouldn't wish that on our region.
Understood.
But if I could work in the UN in this region, I would.
Wow. So coming back to Trinidad and Tobago, you ended up back into...
Yeah, I had to go back to DPP. It's like started all over again. And I stayed in DPP for the next 6 years.
Right. And 6 years, and you decided, okay, you had enough of working for the state and...
No. So remember, after the DPP, I became an assistant registrar.
Oh, yes! How come you forget that? Oh, you see this? You see why I'm saying that this is a journey unfolding? Listen.
I became an assistant registrar and deputy marshal.
Yes, tell us about that.
Being an assistant registrar and deputy marshal.
The whole aspect of leaving DPP, criminal, to move into now administrative part of the judiciary. Because many people won't know what is an assistant registrar except for duties.
So, the DPP is criminal law, right?
Yes.
Dana Sitahal got murdered. I was just looking at how things were going in the department. I don't need to rehash all the weaknesses of the DPP's departments, the personnel, and I just thought I needed a balanced life, and I knew that marriage was coming up. So it was all different things, and I also felt that we weren't given opportunities to be promoted. We were doing work at a higher level, and promotions were coming in slow, and getting to go into high court, because I was at magistrate court level for a while, and because in DPP, in order to go up to high court at that time, somebody who's in the high court had to leave, either resign, die, move on, become a judge, to open up space, because it wasn't like rotational. When you reach in high court, you do the high court work. You're not coming back down really to do magistrate court work. Okay. So I just felt like, I wanted to progress a little more, and then I was looking at where I wanted to go in the future. Do I want to be, after DPP, where? I become a DPP, I become a judge, all these things, so many things were in my mind, and I thought, you know what, no, I think it would be best for me to look outside of the DPP's department. And I saw the assistant registrar job. I thought it would have suited my lifestyle as someone who was about to be married. Yes. I spoke to some people. It seemed a little less strenuous at that time than working with the DPP. So I applied for that job. I also applied the same time to work with Ministry of National Security. The national security job came in. I went to national security as a state counsel 3 for like a month, and then I was told, oh, you also got the assistant registrar job. So it was a choice. Do I stay working with Ministry of National Security as an acting state 3 because I was there while somebody else went off to do something else, or take a more permanent position as an assistant registrar, which also had the supervisory skill? Because at this point, I've had how much? Like almost 10 years called to the bar. I wanted to get that supervisory experience. Yes. So I opted to become an assistant registrar and deputy marshal. But as you said, being an assistant registrar and deputy marshal was heavily administrative. And
you were assigned to the High Court, of course.
Yes, all assistant registrars and deputy marshals are assigned to the High Court. And
what is your rule? What was your rule there in terms of the department?
So it sort of depends on which court you're assigned to. So, but generally speaking, I would say for me, I worked at the High Court in South first, mainly. Then I was actually posted to Tobago yes. For about 4 months in the family court in Tobago, and I spent most of my time at family court in North, in Trinidad. So generally speaking, I spent maybe 60% of my day reviewing orders. When you're in civil, default judgments, we dealt with that in family. Absolutes, that's when you want to become a divorce, we are the ones who issue the absolutes. So reviewing anything that would have been stemming out of a decision in a court. So when you're in civil, if there are warrants, we would be the ones to sign the warrants. So anything, but a lot of orders. Yes. I spent most of my day reviewing minutes and signing orders, endless orders.
Yeah, because orders coming from various courts.
So we dealt with a lot of orders. We did when people need to advertise certain things, we are the one who have to review the ads, get it posted. So all of those things, anything stemming out of something needing to be done or issued from a matter, we did that. There was also, I became a registrar in February 2020.
Yes.
In March 2020, yes. COVID hit Trinidad, and that absolutely changed. Apparently, I was told, because remember, I had just started, but in speaking to other registrars, they told me that completely changed the way registrars operate, and actually put more work on how a registrar had to operate. We had to go virtual.
And then you are more accessible now, because before you couldn't have access to a registrar just like that. Now you send an emails.
Right, so that's why I went back to go forward to tell you what the day would be like. Yeah. So COVID completely changed the nature of registrars. As you said, one of the things is it became more accessible all the time. So besides the orders, you spend a lot of time doing that. You spend a lot of time doing what I would call CSR, if I can describe it like that, customer relations, because attorneys are emailing you. I would have no lesser than 50 emails every day from attorneys and other court personnel and citizens who are stating that, and of course, everybody who emails you believes their matter is the most urgent.
Of course.
So you have to manage that. Then, of course, you are sort of like the liaison between the judicial officer and court staff. So judicial officers would call you about different things. Court staff would call you about court functions.
Court staff as well?
Yes. So the court staff, if there's anything going on in court, they would call you. The staff would call you so that you can assist with something going on with the virtual court. The court shut down. The staff not doing this. Staff da-da-da. So you have that, and then there's a lot of policy. So during COVID, of course, you have to decide. You have to change the system. Yes. So we involved in a lot of those policy meetings.
Too, and
rapidly. So in the beginning, when I first joined, I did a lot of, assisted in drafting a lot of those practice directions that came out that changed how different things. It starts with the registrars drafting, we junior registrars doing the basic draft, going into more senior registrar who would think and then take it to the Chief Justice. And so all of that policy we had to do. I remember meetings, 6, 7 o'clock in the night, 8 o'clock in the night, how to get the judicial system run or keep it running during this worldwide phenomena.
Yeah.
So a lot of policy in the beginning, the first year, a lot of development. But then when that calmed down, of course, there's still staff training. So I did training for electronic monitoring. I was one of the assistant registrars who had to design and present. What else? What else we did? We do have some judicial functions. So when I was in family court, I did a lot of taxing of costs. And if you're in civil, you would be doing it, assessment of costs. People come to you for, we are the ones who had, when people want to use copies of wills, when people want to do judgment summons. So we also have a judicial function as an assistant registrar. So it's a multifaceted role.
And a stressful role.
It's stressful. It wasn't like mentally challenging as in.
The work is not challenging.
No, it's not the content, it's the
volume
and the various interests that you have to appease. You have private citizens, you have attorneys, you have judicial officers, you have staff, you have your own registrars to deal with, you have court managers. Yeah. That was also a thing. So it's a lot of personalities, a lot of things to manage that made that job.
And then you decided to
I decided. So I would say the combination of a pandemic and being an assistant registrar, I decided, you know what? This is an excellent, wonderful position, but maybe not an excellent, wonderful position for me. So I took a sabbatical. I also had some personal things going on that time. Actually, I had a surgery at that time, so I just took a sabbatical. I had a lot of vacation days. I had a lot. So I just stopped. I slowed down. I don't know if you gathered that I'm a very busy person, always doing various things. And I decided last year, try something new. Stop. Just slow down. Of course, even in my slowing down, I had to have a plan.
Yes.
So I read a couple books. I lined up books to read. I did a mediation course. I traveled. So even in my slowing down. And then I said, God, now what? And for the first time, I got that feeling that I should go into private practice.
I know that is something that you have been pondering with.
It's not that
between that transition.
In my mind, because if I wanted to get into politics, I could never figure. I never sat down and thought about it, but I just in the back of my mind, and I just thought, I don't know how I could do this working for the state.
Yes. Yeah.
It could never make sense. And when I decided, okay, being an assistant registrar is not for me, now what? And it finally felt right, like the right time to go into private practice.
Wow. And you've opened, Bates Law?
John Bates Law, yes. Oh my goodness, Rondell, I feel like I'm bearing my soul on TV. Wow.
This is good for your archives, of
good
course.
For my Why am I, you have me putting my business on Front Street, Rondell?
Oh my God. No, listen, you won't believe how many people you have inspired today.
Really?
You have inspired me just listening to your journey, because all of us have various journeys.
Right.
Yeah. Various times we go, and sometimes you plan things out, but at the end of the day, you have to always wait on your higher bin. You have to wait on God. Yeah. Right? And I believe that, your journey inspires not only young people, but women in addition, to show that, okay, at the end of the day, you can still have a family, you can still have a life, and still pursue your own self.
Yes. Well, I mean, I have to put the caveats, because I don't have children. I have a dog, he's getting like a child, but I don't have children. So I know, looking at my colleagues who have children, I probably would not have been able to do many of the things I wanted to do at the same time. So they say women can have it all and we can have it all. Maybe not all at the same time. It's a lot of prioritizing. And I have a very supportive husband. I mean, he met me, he knows I'm a person always.
Big up Mr. Bates.
Yes, and different things. I believe, and I know a certain
He's
politician said it and people took umbrage, but be careful. The choice of a partner is critical. So my husband is very understanding.
And seeing him even through your, you know, your our stint when we decided to go up for political.
Yes.
In the election, he was always there and supportive, etc.
Having a supportive partner is critical, I think, to the success, especially of any woman, I would think, because even though we are moving away from a traditional model and women could do anything, it could work anywhere, people still have this idea that women, I always say this, if somebody walks into the house and the house is in a disarray, they're not going to say they had the house nasty, you know. They would say, look how she had the house. I don't know if maybe it's a female guilt, a lot of females feel it, but I feel that there's still some things people expect a woman to do. Your husband, look how, I have had family members say to me, so, yes, your husband, he looking like he's hungry, go and get something for him to eat now. And in my mind, I want to say, so what happened? He handbrake? But, I mean, I love him too, and marriage is service, so I wouldn't say that, but at the end of the day, there are expectations placed on women that I do not think are placed on men.
Wow, that's a different discussion there. but of course, I mean, we are out of time shortly. They already told me wrap up. But I want to get quickly. Into just. I mean, I know service.
I can't believe I can't believe the time.
Yes, literally, and this is what I'm saying. Right. How can we talk that in an hour? Yes, we can. Okay. I mean, in another hour. But as I said, in terms of you know, myself being a creative as well.
Yes.
Right, you being a creative and coming into law.
Yes.
I know that even from very early in the career, your seniors will tell you law is a jealous mistress.
Yes, you hear that all the time. And colleagues, I was speaking to a colleague recently who I thank him. He volunteered to assist me. He knows I just started come up with a strategic plan, and he kept telling me, listen, law is life and life is law.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm unique. For me, my creative outlets assist me to be a more balanced, sane individual, and I can't give them up.
Exactly. You
can't give them up.
Because like for instance with me, I have been performing since the age of 4.
Right.
Regardless of what, I have maintained that level of, because that makes me whole.
Exactly.
It makes me happy,
makes me whole.
right? And and sometimes, you know, I always believe in being multifaceted.
Yes.
I always believe, you know, obviously, extracurricular activities make you an all-rounded individual.
For me,
right?
and that's always been. I have also been singing since Newton Girls Choir, many music festivals. I was in 12 and Under the same year with Karen Ashley when she won, I believe, 12 and Under.
Yeah.
I'm a member of Marionettes. Christmas is coming up, putting a plug there for Marionettes Chorale. So for me, I prioritize. So I have a diary with all my court dates.
Yes.
I also put in my extracurricular activities. So I put in the days, I have to write them down now, choir practice, even some social events on Saturdays. I prioritize my social aspects of my life.
Your triathlon is
yes, I'm a member of EXO Multisport Club, which is a triathlon club. But again, I can't do everything. So I've actually made a decision this year to focus only on running. So triathlon is swim, ride, run. My swimming is atrocious, but I've made a decision to focus only on running this year. UE is supposed to have their half marathon, and if it really comes off, it's my intention to run UE half marathon this year.
Wow. Janelle, we have to go. Listen, this has been an amazing time. I mean, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate pouring yourself out and, you know, putting your business on the road.
Business on Front Street. Yes.
But you know, you are inspiration. I believe your journey can help others. Your journey has definitely helped me today, right? And thank you so much for being on Strictly Legal.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, code for today, opportunities don't happen. You create them. Just remember that. You have been watching Strictly Legal. Thank you for watching. I'm Rondell. I'm out. God bless.